Welcome! Welcome to week 7 of MPAI 600 here at Georgetown University School of Continuing Studies Applied Intelligence Program. I just start off with announcements. Zoom session for groups 4, 5, and 6, 17 October. That's Thursday, 17 October, at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, we'll have about 20 minutes for each group, so plan for about 15 to 20 minutes to speak, and that gives 5 minutes or so for questions and feedback. And then what we'll do is, so that'll last an hour, and then at 10 o'clock I'll have a job talk, and I'll talk about careers in the federal government, careers in the intelligence community, and so my observations that I've seen being on both sides of job interviews, and other points that I think would be helpful in your career. So we have that to look forward to on 17 October, and then course evaluations. If you haven't gotten already, you will in the next week or two. A course evaluation for this course. Please fill them out. One, it'll be helpful to tailor this course for future classes coming up to make sure that the readings are good, the readings are targeted, the work is targeted, so that you can have a better class next time. This class is probably a lot better because other people did course evaluations prior to this, so please kind of pay it forward. In addition, there's a probability you might have me in the future, so it behooves you to give some good feedback, what you liked, what you didn't, so I can target this next time I have you. So current events. The whistleblower has dominated the news cycle. We did have a shooting in Kansas, which I don't think we've gotten a lot of information on. But I do want to circle back to the whistleblower, but more importantly, the Russia investigation and the Mueller report and what happened in the 2016 election. First, there's a lot of misnomers, a lot of salacious things that have been put out that aren't really relevant to what happened in 2016. You'll hear other things about finances, personal conduct by some of the Republicans, money laundering. You hear all this. That kind of clouds the issue. What happened in 2016 is clear. The Russians attacked our election by using insider information and weaponizing that to the detriment of the Clinton campaign. They might have had a lot of Facebook ads and a lot of other ads out there against the Clinton campaign, but really the attack was breaking into private emails and private servers from the Democratic National Committee and selectively leaking information in a manner that was harmful to the Clinton campaign. That was the 2016 election. That's what happened. And I think the key point here is that, you can write all these Facebook and pull all these ads and say Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump are bad people, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't have as much of an effect as insider information, at least the perception of insider information that was revealed in the 2016 election. And if you can't remember, you have the Democratic National Committee, again, criticizing Bernie Sanders, who was opposing Hillary Clinton at the time. You had other information in John Podesta's email about insider speeches, and other things that were to the detriment of both the Sanders, or made the Clinton campaign look bad. I'll just say that, and broke up the constituencies in the Democratic committee at the time, and really impacted. And again, is insider information. And let me give you an example here. I think everyone's heard of the Boeing 737 issue that's come up, flying on having issues, 2 crashes in Ethiopia and other places where Boeing, apparently there was some faulty engines. So that's bad. Probably avoid it. The planes are still in the air, but they're not totally grounded, and they're still flight worthy. If tomorrow an insider leak came from let's say an executive from the Boeing company that said something like, there is no way I would put my daughter on one of these 737s that's out there, Boeing stock would nosedive tomorrow. because the credibility of insider information is what really allows it to be weaponized. So even if, let's say, Boeing's emails were hacked or leaked, and even though there was selective leaking or selective hacking, if a line like "I would not put my kids on a Boeing 737" got out from a Boeing executive, that would kill Boeing in a heartbeat. Romaine lettuce. Some of you might remember the romaine lettuce scares earlier this year. People they pulled romaine lettuce off the shelves for a while. CDC gave warnings, but actually it's not too bad anymore. I just had romaine lettuce right now. But if an executive from the romaine lettuce company said, "There's no way I'd let my kids eat romaine lettuce," that would have a lot of credibility and ultimately destroy the romaine lettuce industry. So again, that's the key point. Insider, or the perception of insider information and damaging a political party or a business's brand is what happened with the Russians did, and what private companies are doing right now to undermine their competition, trying to get into insider information to undermine the products and undermine the brand of their rivals. So that's a key point going forward. So paper 2, everyone's got paper 2 back. I think everyone did a pretty good job on it. Everyone got their comments on it. Just some key observations. Passive voice. I think people think they know what passive voice is, but they don't know really what passive voice is. Passive voice is, this is an active sentence. The boy, which is a subject, kicked, which is the verb, ball is the direct object. The ball was kicked by the boy is a passive sentence. Direct object, verb, subject. I don't mean to sound like your 9th grade English teacher here, but that's how you tell the difference between an active and a passive sentence. And if I were you, and I do this on my papers, I actually write out direct object, indirect object, subject, verb on my sentences, so I know what's passive and what's active. It's tedious, but when you have tight papers and tight, 1,500 word papers or 1,500 word policy papers that you have to write, you want to really, every noun, verb, preposition, indirect object, they all have to earn their way onto your paper. And you always ask, do you need a direct object? Do you need an indirect object on a sentence? I get into that level of detail in my papers going forward, especially in my day jobs. So that's what I ask you to do, just to eliminate the passive voice. No laundry list. This was the overwhelming issue that I saw in the papers. Is I was very clear I did not want laundry lists. I wanted you to focus on one or two issues. Choose what the primary issue was of the intelligence failure. If you're choosing 9/11 and you're arguing that it was organizational failure, okay, choose that. If it's Iraq WMD and it's the interface between policymakers and intelligence analysts, choose that. Don't give me 15 reasons why Iraq WMD failed or something along those lines. And then along those issues, you have to show me how that failure had cascading effects, which should prove that whatever you say as a primary failure was the primary failure. If you say, Yom Kippur War, the failure of Houmet Mohan to report in, if that was your thesis, then you have to show me that the IDF would have mobilized faster, and this would have in turn averted catastrophe in the first days of the Yom Kippur War. You have to draw that out in your papers. You have to show me, if you're going to do 9/11 and you're going to argue that organizational failures were the reason, you have to tell me specifically the inability of the NSA to communicate with FBI prevented an investigation which would have undermined the 9/11 plot. You have to draw that out for me. And you have to show, again, how the Intel failure, if it was an alternative analysis, would have driven decisions that would have averted catastrophe. That was missing in, I wouldn't say many, most of the papers that I read. So, with that being said, just previous week, I do want to talk about lone wolves based on the Kansas City shooting. There's that gap that I mentioned last week, and I can't emphasize this enough. Whether it's, and again, I'm going back to week 5 a little bit here, but whether it's mental illness or terrorism, how do we get in that gap? When someone is an indicator of terrorism, when someone has mental health issues, but we can't arrest them. And then I would argue, I'm going to state a little bit of controversy here, the no-fly list and guns. Right now, you can be on the no-fly list and still purchase a gun in all 50 states here in the United States. Terrorists can use other things, bomb-making material. They could use their car as a terrorist activity. But let's face it, a gun is an easy way to kill a lot of people in our country. And preventing access to those by people that are suspicious is the critical point here. I would also say, and this is going to be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway, what would help law enforcement is if you flipped that equation on the ground around. Let's say someone goes hot on a no-fly list, or someone goes hot on a mental health watch list, and then we can backtrack that they've purchased 15 AR-15s in the last year, or something along those lines. That would be very helpful to law enforcement. That would be an indicator of something that person is doing something wrong. Unfortunately, some states track your gun purchase history. Most states do not. And no state has a federal gun or there's no gun registry, or at least there's no gun registry at the federal level that would allow you that information to be pulled up on an instant. So, two things here. We want to block people who are already on watch lists and mental health lists. But we also want to backtrack people that pop hot on these lists to see if they've purchased a lot of weapons in the past, and that's an indicator of potential criminal activity or terrorist activity. So, CompStat, was it the decisive factor? A lot of you had debates on this. I think most people said it wasn't. It did allow a focusing factor for police authorities. It provided metrics and issues for precinct captains and local law enforcement. But one, it's hard sometimes to establish metrics, even in some cities. If you are in North Baltimore near Towson, it's really nice out, and there's not a lot of criminal activity. Versus if you're in East Baltimore, which there is a lot of criminal activity, should that precinct captain be judged against the precinct captain in North Baltimore? The metrics aren't going to change if you're in North Baltimore because there's no crime to begin with. The metrics can change and fluctuate in East Baltimore. Sometimes criminal activity in North Baltimore, drug purchases, drug trafficking, shows up in East Baltimore. It's hard to really blame, that precinct captain in East Baltimore if there's criminal activity if North Baltimore is an origination point. So it's kind of hard to establish these metrics that CompStat calls for. And then you had altered reports due to incentives that were brought up in the reading. Whenever there's bonuses and money on the line, people will alter, whether it's police or teachers or other jobs, people will alter test scores, alter reports to make themselves look better. That happens all the time. If you're in the military, you probably saw it kind of firsthand. And there's incentives, of course, to juice your numbers or alter the reports or shift statistics around to make you look better. And then there's other factors for the decline in crime. As I mentioned, better economy, demographics, lead paint, and removal of lead paint and lead from water. A civilizing process that the historian Steven Pinker likes to say, that says that people realize that crime doesn't pay. These are all issues that led to the decline in crime from the 1970s to now. So that's CompStat. And then the Boston Marathon documentary. The one thing you looked at, and again, they talked about a lot of cool tools that were used investigative, post-blast, to catch the Boston Marathon bombers. But how applicable are these? A lot of different municipalities have invested in CCTVs. I don't know, to differing success rates. A lot of municipalities have invested in thermal cameras and others that might be helpful for these high-profile cases, but may not be applicable to criminal investigative techniques widespread or broadly. I'll let you decide again, and I think we got some pretty good comments on the discussion board. So week 7, we're doing a little bit of a shift to business intelligence. I think we've got 2 people in the business intelligence track here in this class. And it's good if you're in business world to listen to the case studies we talked about earlier, because they definitely impact business mindsets. And it's also, if you're coming from the law enforcement or national security realm, to look at business case studies, which we will do in this week, and see what lessons learned you can derive from the private sector. So you have the Dr. Gilad interview. He's one of the pioneers of business intelligence, so it's a real treat to have his insights. And then the question to look at is businesses that operate in the same space. Why did Best Buy beat Circuit City? People say Amazon and Best Buy are competitors. That's not true. Amazon is suddenly a force of its own using e-commerce, but Best Buy was able to adapt to the e-commerce, non-retail environment. Circuit City was not. No one shops at Circuit City anymore. Here in D.C., CVS dominates the drugstore markets, while Walgreens and Rite Aid, and they've combined, are still lagging well behind. Why? What are the variables for success? What are the variables for failure? And then think about the applications to national security issues as you go through these lessons. So, barring any questions, I look forward to a discussion board, and I'll see you guys on the 17th.